Appreciate it. Thank you for your work on behalf of the people of Northeast Florida, and to Senator Johnson for his leadership on this issue, and all of our colleagues that have decided to support it. By the way, it's not a coincidence that 2 of the 3 people on the stage are from Florida, being a state that last week had 300,000 people in our state notified that they would lose their existing coverage. So tomorrow's Halloween, so in the spirit of Halloween, I wanted to share with you a horror story. Unfortunately, it's a real-life horror story. It's the story of everyday Americans who, for years, have purchased a certain insurance because it made sense for them. It was the right price, it covered the right things, and they were happy with that coverage. But suddenly they've been told that according to the government and pursuant to the president and the wisdom of the people who supported this law, that insurance that they decided was good enough for them is no longer good enough for them, and so they can no longer have it. Now they must go out and buy an alternative insurance, one that maybe covers more things, including things that they quite frankly don't need and don't want to pay for. And by the way, it will probably cost them a lot more money. I wish that that were just a horror story in the movies or in fiction, but it's reality. It's the reality that's happening, and it's going to happen to millions of Americans. I also wish I could tell you that this was an unintended consequence, because if that was the case, it would be much easier to fix it. But it is in fact now known, according to investigative reports by NBC News and other outlets, that this is not an unintended consequence. This is an intended consequence. They designed it to be this way because they want to gut the individual marketplace. They do not want Americans to be able to go out and pick and choose the exact type of coverage they want. They allow you, what they're really saying is, you can have any insurance plan you want as long as we, the federal government, believe it's good enough for you. And that's what this means. So put yourself now in the place of the real people who are facing this. They've got 2 options. Number one, they can buy another plan that existing company is offering to them, but that new plan may have a deductible much higher than what they're paying today. In fact, much more than they can afford. It may be more expensive in its premiums because, by the way, it covers all sorts of things that they never intend to use. Or their second option is they can go on the exchange and get a plan on the exchange. The problem with that is that the mechanism by which they're supposed to buy it, a website, doesn't work. It doesn't not only not tell them what the price is, it doesn't allow them to even get on in many instances. Just today, as the secretary was testifying about how great all this is, the website she's touting broke down and didn't work. It malfunctioned once again. The irony of it, but also the reality of what we're facing as a country. This is unfair. We should be encouraging the individual marketplace, not undermining it. And the last point I would make is I find it outrageous that the White House's response to all of this is that, well, this is a small sliver of the American people. This is only 5% of people that get coverage. Actually, it's about twice that in terms of people under 65 who get coverage. And it also happens to be millions of real human beings, millions of real people who are suffering from this. For the people who are losing their coverage, this is not a 5% problem. This is a 100% problem because it impacts their lives. It's fundamentally unfair, and it is wrong. And it is just the latest in what will be a series of outrages that are going to emerge from this law. With your indulgence, I want to say a few words in Spanish, if that's okay. Esta ley se le prometió a las personas que si alguien tenía cobertura que le gustaba, se podían quedar con esa cobertura de seguro. Ya sabemos que eso no es así. Que bajo los cambios que trae esta ley, millones de personas en este país van a perder el seguro que tienen ahora, el seguro con el cual están complacidos, y van a tener que aplicar un nuevo seguro que cuesta mucho más. Y eso no es culpa de estas personas, pero lo van a sufrir. Quisiera poder decir que esto es algo que está pasando sin intenciones, pero esto ya sabemos que fue hecho de una manera intencional. Que esta administración, a través de esta ley, lo que quiere negar es la habilidad de americanos de poder comprar un seguro en el mercado individual. Eso es una promesa que el presidente ha rompido y es algo injusto para el futuro del país. Thank you.
Thank you, Marco and Rana. I want to thank both gentlemen because we all had a similar idea and they were all working on similar types of bills, but we all came together to try and support one particular bill and work and support each other on that. So again, I want to thank both of you from that. And now we're happy to entertain any questions you might have.
Mr. Johnson, does your grandfather clause just allow the companies to keep the current plans that did not meet the requirements of the CA in place?
Yeah, basically what we did is if you take a look at the original grandfather clause in Obamacare, is it has a true grandfather clause. The first couple of paragraphs, first couple of sections are a real grandfather clause, but then the next sections basically eviscerate that. So we basically eviscerate their evisceration and basically use their same language. And we also expand, though, the plans that qualify, not only those that were in existence at the time of enactment, but those plans will be in existence and being chosen and used up until December 31st, 2013. So basically, our grandfather clause would grandfather in any plan currently in effect.
What if the company has already made the decision not to offer that plan anymore?
Well, they could go back. That'd be their choice. They can go back and offer the plan they're working on. So from my standpoint, my interpretation of our language is any plan from the day of enactment through this point in time, they could go back and, because as I think the point of your question is, a lot of people already modified their plans right away to bring them into compliance with the healthcare law, and of course that increased costs. Now, none of this stuff is free, and I think it's another important point is even though you don't get a notice of cancellation, people on employer-sponsored care probably having their insurance plan canceled, and it's being renewed in an opaque fashion. They don't even realize it, but it's going to cost more because of all these expensive mandates.
So is this a permanent change in law?
Yes, there's that as long as they maintain that coverage, as I said, it'll go on forever.
Can I just add one point to that? I'm sorry, because
No, it's
I think it's
fine.
important. If you now have a current policy on an individual policy, this law doesn't mean you can't change it. It doesn't force you to keep that existing policy. If in fact you find out there a better policy for you under Obamacare or anything else, you have the freedom to do that. This doesn't force you to stay with your existing coverage. It just says that it remains an option for you. And the reason why that's so important is because that's a fundamental promise that was made. Why did the president make that promise? Why did the president tell people that if they had insurance and they were happy with it, they could keep it? Because he knew that was important to people. And he knew that this law would not pass if people thought that, in fact, that wouldn't be there. This was not just one of the things they said offhand. This was a fundamental promise that was made in order to gain support for this law. And now we know that that's not true. In the commercial world, that's called being dishonest in advertising. And I think in terms of this bill, I think it's instructive that not only was this a mistake, this was by design. They knew this, and they kept saying it. And that in and of itself is wrong.